Hello everyone. We'll just wait for a couple more minutes until the rest of the post-Easter slowpokes join us. So hang in there for a tick and we'll launch shortly. Hello everyone and welcome back to our monthly research seminar. It's good to have you with us. I trust you all had a great long weekend. And for those of you who have registered simply to be able to access the recording after the seminar because you're unable to attend, well, I hope you're still enjoying your weekend break. For those of you I haven't met before, my name is Dave Lamb. I'm the Chief Scientist of Food Agility CRC and I'll be the MC. I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands and waters upon which we all live and work. I'd like to pay respects to elders of all of these lands and these waters, both past, present and emerging. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Food Agility, we're a CRC dedicated to unlocking the power of data and digital to transform our agri-food sector. Now, before I introduce our speakers, just a quick reminder on some of the housekeeping. The session is being recorded and ultimately we'll make a copy of the recording available to you. We do welcome questions and please use the Q&A tab, not the chat tab, but the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Now, whilst it's not possible for you to ask questions of the presenters directly yourself, I'll work through your posted Q&A with the presenters on your behalf. And of course, if you still have questions you'd love to ask or issues you'd like to follow up with our presenters, then please do so. You can find details on the opening slide of the talk, and also both of our presenters are quite easy to find online. So now to our seminar topic. In the week preceding this long weekend break, the Commonwealth Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment hosted another National Traceability Summit in Canberra as part of its ongoing work to shore up, in inverted commas, Australia's agricultural traceability systems and to increase access to premium overseas markets. Measures recently announced by the Federal Minister include the establishment of a National Agriculture Traceability Alliance to ensure robust industry and jurisdictional engagement, and a National Agricultural Traceability Hub to develop a roadmap for action and to fund research and industry proofs of concepts. We also fund industry proofs of concepts as a CRC. The whole point of transparent traceability systems is to show consumers that our products are safe, clean and sustainable from paddock through to plate, and that this will ultimately drive our access to premium overseas markets. In this seminar, you'll hear what this looks like at the ground level through the eyes of one of our project teams who have been experimenting on track and trace innovations with Australian cherries. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you today's speakers. And we've got two of them working in tandem. Jessica Fearnley from the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, DPI, and Melanie Wishart from GS1 Australia. Jess joined New South Wales DPI in 2019 and has been working in many areas of crop production and supply chain research in temperate fruits. As a cherry industry lead, Jess works with growers across New South Wales to improve crop yield, quality and market access. She also has a keen interest in helping growers improve their climate adaptation through management practices and digital technology. Jess leads the Cherry Plus Traceability project, the project you're about to hear about in this seminar. It's a collaboration between Food Agility CRC, New South Wales DPI, GS1 Australia, Woolworths and Cherry Growers Australia. As part of the customer engagement team with GS1 Australia, our second presenter, Mel, heads up the food safety, compliance and traceability pillar and helps to deliver strategic projects and implementation. A defining feature of all of our CRC projects is the strong guidance and leadership of the technology service delivery partner and Mel's in-depth knowledge of the GS1 system of standards and services to improve business efficiencies, food safety and visibility through the supply chain is critical to the success of this pilot. So it's a privilege to have both Jess and Mel with us today, and we look forward to hearing more about the Cherry Plus Traceability and Digital Link project. Thanks, Jess and Mel.
Thank you, Dave. We'll jump straight in. So really appreciate everyone coming online this afternoon, and for those watching a little bit later, as Dave said, more than happy to answer any questions or answer any thoughts that you guys might have around our traceability project. Dave gave a really good introduction on what traceability is and how it's becoming more and more of the fashionable topic of agriculture at the moment. So this project is really nicely situated in what's kind of going on at the moment and is quite current to what growers are experiencing today. So if we'll just go to the next slide, Mel. So today, Mel and I are going to give a little bit of an overview of what the Cherry Plus Traceability project is. We'll give a bit of an outline of how we undertook the pilot, a couple of key results, but where it's more of a wait and see what happens with our results as we're still undergoing this project set to complete in September. And then I'll walk you through a little bit of what's next for this project. So the industries that we had that come online for this pilot had a lot of varying problems that they wanted us to solve. And the groups on this page here, we all put our heads together and identified some key industry issues that we thought that we could pull together to create answers for. So at the moment, there is no property identification for plant industries. So most of you will probably be familiar with the NLIS tag systems for the livestock industry, or the PIC code, so the property identification code. And all of these are really good ways of being able to identify where product has come from and what property animals live at. Unfortunately, this is not the case with plant industries. And this creates issues in emergency management scenarios or food safety incidences where we can't actually track back and find where product has originated from easily. It can be done, but not very easily. So this all came to light in the 2019 bushfires when regulatory officers had to try and run around looking with a paper-based system, ad hoc, trying to find pack houses and properties that could have been in the line of the fire and try and allocate resources based on this. And it was inefficient, it took too much time, and resources weren't allocated as effectively as they should have been. So the Minister for Agriculture identified this as a key problem for the plant industries and would like a solution for it. The second problem that we're kind of grappling with as an industry is that there are numerous traceability systems available for growers. And this is across every industry in the agricultural sector. And whilst there's a numerous number available, they all require different data, they all rely on different data requirements. So they're not easily integrated. And this is difficult for growers if they've got an internal traceability system, and they've got a different traceability system for their retailer and a different traceability system for the consumer end as well. So this is an area that we see that we can kind of help integrate a traceability system. Another big problem that most of the horticulture industry, I can probably preach to the converted here, is the digital certification. So with if you're got a product that you're trying to sell overseas, or you are from a pest-free area and you're trying to get interstate, most products have to carry a digital most products have to have a certification requirement or a certificate attached to the pallet that will say the different protocols that this product has gone through. Without digital certification, this paper-based system basically gets lost. It can be tedious trying to stick paper onto pallets, and all in all, it's just a really big teething problem that the industry has at the moment. So this project, we tried to identify areas of where we could have digital certification. The next little issue was that at the moment, the proliferation of proprietary barcodes for different supply chain use cases. So different barcodes for every point of the supply chain. And we wanted a way that we could streamline this and have one barcode the whole way through the supply chain. So we'll just jump to the next one, Mel. So with all of these industry issues that we had, the Cherry Traceability pilot was born, and we had the project outcome to have properties in the horticultural supply chain to be identified and product traced and tracked to support biosecurity and food safety management. So our overall aim was to be able to identify those properties using a traceability format. To do this and use that integration of data, we wanted to use GS1 data standards to identify properties in the horticulture supply chain at any time. So all our data that we had was one standard and it could be integrated into every format. We wanted to prove that these data standards supported efficient emergency response and supply chain logistics, and including all required data for interstate markets. So we didn't want to just do a New South Wales focused pilot. We wanted to make sure that this was able to be used across states and nationally. With our pilot, we also wanted to identify pain points in the supply chain, and that was to help minimize waste and improve product quality for consumers. So as you can see, we had a few different levels, and we had that value add option at the end that we wanted to see how long products stayed in the supply chain for. Were there points where product was in and out of scope, and was the product put away for a certain time, forgotten about, and then had to go to waste because of that. So I'll just pass on to Mel, who's going to talk about how we actually did the project now.
Thanks very much, Jess, and thank you to David for having us here today. So I'm not sure if the people on the call know much about GS1, but in regards to traceability, one of the key objectives, as Jess mentioned, was to use GS1 global data standards to identify properties and to support efficient emergency response, supply chain logistics up and down the supply chain, specifically for the use case of biosecurity or food safety management. So one of the definitions for traceability and product tracing is the ability to follow movement of food through a specified stage of production, processing, distribution. So the ability to identify the history of a product or produce item and know where it is, where it should be and where it's going, and also what's happening to it at any given point in the supply chain. For example, is it being harvested, or is it being shipped or packed or transported? So for the ability to identify a product, place or party in the supply chain requires the ability to recover information that has been captured and stored and record against it. So GS1 standards provides the means to identify, capture and share information about a product as it does move through the supply chain. And these are globally unique, persistent means to identify. We have identification keys that can identify every level of packaging. We have identification keys to identify the parties and the locations throughout the supply chain that are critical to enable us to track and trace. We can also provide data standards to identify attribute live traceability data, such as batch lot codes or date codes. And then we have a suite of data carriers that are used to quickly and efficiently and accurately capture that traceability data. And we have global data standards that allow us to describe and share data throughout the supply chain using a syntax that other systems can capture and process and query. So this makes traceability interoperable between different systems and makes the system solution agnostic, so that companies aren't locked into a specific system. So it's scalable and enables business to speak a common language outside of your own four walls for external traceability. So we talked about the need to identify products, places and parties, and the GS1 identification keys allow us to do this. So we can identify individual locations and properties such as farms or fields within a farm, cool rooms, pack sheds, distribution centres and every supply chain point. We also then have the identification key, or the GTIN, the Global Trade Item Number, to identify the product, whether it's an individual produce item or a tray or a crate or a bin or a pallet. And then the data that follows is a global common language that can be captured and recorded and shared using these ID keys as it moves through the supply chain and to the end customer or end user. So this is just an example of what we mean by identification keys we used for locations, the GLN, or the Global Location Number, which we use to identify every supply chain point in the project. And then you can also see here examples of GTINs, which are already being used throughout the supply chain in every country of the world as a requirement of dealing with trading partners, and for this project for Woolworths, so that it identifies the consumer unit, the tray, as well as the pallet. So the GS1 standards for data capture includes a range of different types of barcodes that are used at different levels of the supply chain. We have a barcode for the point of sale. We have a barcode for the pallet. And for our pilot project, we also introduced a new GS1 standard called Digital Link, which is encoded into a QR code and can be read by any smartphone, which sort of brings the 50-year-old GS1 barcode onto the internet. So I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. Our two pilot projects followed potatoes and organic cherries from New South Wales farms through the Woolworths distribution network and then to the consumer. Working with our potato grower, Matolo Family Farms in Western New South Wales, and the Fresh Chain system as the traceability platform, we printed 4,500 QR codes that were individually serialised and contained the pack date and the batch lot code using this GS1 digital link syntax. The project tracked 3 harvest dates and 3 pack dates on the 2 kilo bags of Woolworths branded potatoes. And the quick lock tag that contained the GS1 digital link QR code were attached. And then we activated them using a barcode reader and loaded those to the Fresh Chain system as they went down the packaging line. The serial number that was embedded in that QR code was also linked to the global location number, so that identification key for the property, of the actual field within that paddock where the potatoes were harvested from. The serialised GTINs on the bags of potatoes in that QR code were then linked to the crates as they were packed into the crates. We applied some sensors to the crates and then they were packed into pallets and then scanned into the pallet. So we were able to link the 2 kilo bag to the crate and the crate to the pallet. And that pallet barcode that you see there on the right, the GS1 logistics label, that's a serial number that has been used in the Australian grocery industry for nearly 20 years. That pallet serial number, that bottom barcode there, is also linked to the purchase order number and the movement of the pallet through the Woolworths distribution network. So when the pallets arrive in the Woolworths distribution centre and they're put away, And then when the crates are deaggregated from that pallet, the traceability data of each individual bag was then able to be captured and tracked through to the individual store. For the Cherry project, we were actually able to get on site and print QR codes live on demand and physically apply them to the punnets as they went down the packaging line. So we're also trialling printing digital ink onto the crate level for the cherries, but unfortunately due to the COVID supply chain issues over Christmas, we weren't actually able to get in and scan at the distribution centre. But we were able to test that the printing of this live traceability data and the process of printing and applying is no more time or cost than the current procedure of printing that data in text on the label. We were also able to identify the document using a GS1 identification key, the global document type identifier, and we were able to load certificates to the Fresh Chain platform. And the results from the trial, which we were able to see that the consumers were actually really interested in that. So as Jess said, organic certifications, biosecurity and food safety certifications are required to follow the crate to the store, and the information flow of data must remain with the physical flow of the goods as produce moves interstate and also cross-border. So this is a global issue as well as domestic. So removing this paper trail and digitising certifications is so many opportunities that we're trying to explore. The other aspect of traceability, as we talk about, is the ability to share data along the supply chain. We need a common language. We need global, unique and persistent identification keys, but we also need a set of data that can interoperate with any supply chain and any system. So there's two key concepts that we talk about here for interoperable traceability. That is the critical tracking event and the key data element. So for traceability and to meet our project's objectives, we mapped out and agreed on the supply chain points for the project for both cherries and potatoes. And we looked at what those critical tracking events were, and therefore what data do we need to capture at every one of these points. The key data elements ensure that captured data can be recorded and interpreted by all supply chain points. And what we mean by key data elements is the who, or what parties are involved. So we use the GLN. What is the primary product or item being tracked? We use the GTIN or the pallet ID. Where did the movement or event that included the product take place? Again, we can use a GLN. When did the movement occur? We have a time date stamp following GS1 global data standards. And then why was the product at that location at that time? What business process was happening and what business transactions were happening? So this is the critical tracking event. This is the, am I being harvested, shipped, packed, or stored? So here you can see a couple of examples of different critical tracking events throughout the supply chain and the who, what, where, when, and why, which are linked to then these key data elements. So this is an example of the supply chain that we mapped out for the Cherry project. We were able to successfully track 2 pallets as they moved from 3 organic Cantrell cherry orchards in orange, and we tracked them through harvest, grading, packing, through the cool room, and then through as it was shipped to both Adelaide, Woolworths and Sydney distribution centres. And then as the pallets are receipted into Woolworths, the serialised pallet barcode is scanned and the pallet's put away in its location. As the orders come through from the individual store, the crates are deaggregated from that pallet, loaded to a new pallet, and we were able to capture this through the Woolworths data and add that to the Fresh Chain system to be able to then track to the individual store. We also added some sensors to the crates, as I mentioned, and we tracked temperature for the potatoes. We also were able to capture the light and the humidity levels, which is crucial to make sure they're kept within specification for our purpose of objective of looking at food waste and where there's possible breaches in this shelf life. As the pallets are then receipted into the store, we were able to capture the pallet ID and the sensor data. The crates were unpacked at Woolworths and the products put onto the shelf. So we were able to demonstrate traceability from the date of harvest, the actual cherry orchard, and the batch of the harvest all the way through to the store and then to the consumer. Now, as these products are Woolworths branded, both the cherries and potatoes were Woolworths branded. The sales data couldn't help us because there's multiple suppliers of macro organic 280 gram cherries or Woolworths brushed 2 kilo potatoes. So this is where the GS1 digital link and the QR code comes in. As the consumer scans this barcode, whether in store or at their home, we could then pinpoint where the produce ends up, and we were able to get this really rich consumer insight, and tell the consumer exactly where the produce comes from, but also get data insights from the consumer on the quality and the date that they scanned that. So it's not necessarily the date they purchased it. It could have been scanning in store or at home in their own pantry. And this is an example of the potato supply chain. So the critical tracing events that we captured and the key data elements for all events. We captured 3 unique fields within the paddock at the Matolo farm. We captured the Matolo pack shed farm head office, which was in Adelaide, and the Adelaide distribution centre and service stores, as well as New South Wales. We allocated GLNs to every supply chain point, as you can see. Woolworths already use GLNs and have these assigned to every store, every site, every distribution centre for the use of receiving and sending e-messaging for electronic data interchange, for the order to cash cycle, for purchase orders and dispatch advices. The GLN not only identifies properties for track and trace, but it also identifies physical locations for the purposes of receipting an electronic message. So one of the key outcomes for the CherryPlus project was to demonstrate the use of global traceability standards, that a system is interoperable, solution agnostic, but also that it enables identification of property. So we trialled the use of the GLN, but also a location registry to identify and share the location data about all of the parties and properties in the supply chain. As Jess mentioned, the current situation is non-existent. There's not a national solution, even within the livestock industry. But the current situation of collecting and exchanging information about physical locations is completely manual right across the country. Location master data and location identification are critical components to achieving traceability. So there's a growing number of tech track and trace providers also using a variety of data in different traceability systems. There's no interoperability in regards to location data. So creating and keeping location master data up to date is a costly process, subject to errors. There's no best practice data maintenance, and there's a duplication of effort. So multiple sources of data creating inefficiencies. So using standardized location identification enables supply chain partners and stakeholders to speak that common language again when we're looking at parties and locations, or even assets within a business along the supply chain point. So part of the location data management is a registry. So GS1 has a national location registry that we've been using for many, many years within the healthcare industry and transport and logistics. And the location owners publish their own location master data. So company details, location name, address, contact details, location type, am I a pack shed or a cool room or a farm or a property or a business, and what is the function within that type. We can add internal ID numbers, and other extended location data that's specific to that industry sector. So this Registry of Location Master, the National Location Registry, is now being trialled in horticulture and ag, and it enables businesses to load and manage their own location data and then share it with their partners. This could be for supply chain, for logistics, but also traceability. So for New South Wales DPI, the ability to know where the assets were, the buildings and the properties, in what region, to have that visibility and access during times of emergency is crucial for that, accurate and quick response of emergency response teams. Also knowing where the access points are within a specific property, if is there a pack shed there, what produce item is being grown. So this is how it works. Location data providers provide the data to the registry. They can provide it once and they can make it visible and available to many. Location data providers control the access to the data. So they are the ones that, give permission for external parties to query or to download. The data recipients, so in this case, Fresh Chain Traceability Platform, New South Wales DPI or Woolworths, can then request access to the data, and they can then search the registry by GLN, by a whole suite of different search criteria. And then the registry enables electronic publication and storage, retrieval and exchange of location master data. We provided this feed of data to Fresh Chain via an Excel download. There's multiple ways to upload and download information. An API would have been really useful, but for the purposes of the pilot, we used an Excel spreadsheet. So, that way the data can be maintained and shared, and it's up to date, and more importantly, it's managed by the location provider. So this same data can then be accessed by permission by the location owners and other data recipients that need to query information. Another important outcome of the CherryPlus project was to pilot the new GS1 Digital Link standard. So what we're doing here is integrating the QR technology to enhance consumer experience, but to capture serialized traceability data at every level of packaging and for the digitization of the paper-based compliance documents. This GS1 Digital Link standard extends the power and the flexibility of the GS1 identification key. So the number that you see in the barcode is now on the internet. And all GS1 identifiers and data standards are now a gateway to information that can strengthen brand loyalty, improved supply chain traceability information, or even business partner APIs and regulatory certification can access all of this information on the internet. Where a QR code normally has a URL embedded, and it typically just points to a single specific web page, GS1 Digital Link enables companies and connections to all sorts of business to business, business to consumer, and business to government information. If you're adding a QR code to a product, but also incorporating those GS1 data standards, it means you're not only providing a URL for customers and consumers to scan, but you're also carrying those GS1 identifiers, the same identifiers that are used throughout industry in a non-proprietary, no vendor lock-in system. So the brand owner remains in control, but can still link to any number of different sources, all from the one symbol. So at the time of this project, point of sale environments are unable to scan a QR code. So we still have the traditional GS1 barcode for that point of sale. And we'll see this for quite some time as the world transitions to 2D barcodes. But we were able to, add that batch lock code, add the identification key and the traceability link to the Fresh Chain platform. So there's, infinite opportunities here for brand engagement, but also authorised information to connect with regulatory certifications or traceability data, as well as, recipes and social media and recycling and storage information. We're really seeing that this could be the kind of Lord of the Rings where you've got the one barcode to rule them all. So it was really exciting to be able to pilot this. And you can see there, the barcodes both carry the same identification key. And then we have a structured syntax, which is the 50-year-old GS1 data standards, but we've also put it on the internet. So in order to test our pilot, we conducted 2 desktop mock and trace exercises. For the Matola potato project, we had the following scenarios where we wanted to do a trace back from the 2-kilo bag of potatoes to the paddock at Matolo. We had the 3 paddocks with GLNs loaded to the National Location Registry and shared with all the project partners. And then for the project, we had the harvest linked to the bin ID from the paddock and the paddock to the GLN. We captured and linked that through to the serialised GTINs on the 2-kilo bags through the QR codes. And that was then linked and tracked to the crate and the pallet. Woolworths shared the potatoes movement through the DC network with the critical tracking events, the key data elements that we'd mapped out earlier. This data sharing between Matolo and Fresh Chain and Woolworths was crucial for us to be able to follow every step of that supply chain journey really quickly. We then were able to follow the pallet flow through to the DC and to the store. And then when we scanned the digital link with a phone, it linked to the GLN of the paddock where the potatoes were picked, and also provided harvest date and pack date. So that was quite easy. Tracking forward from Matolo, if there was a biosecurity incident on farm, we want it to be able to track by the GLN. So we could track forward the harvest GLN again through the bin, the lot number, the batch number to the pack date, through to the crate and the pallet, and then again through Woolworths to the affected store. And we'd be able to notify the staff quickly if they needed to do a recall. If there was a food safety incident, we were also able to demonstrate that we can notify the consumer via the Fresh Chain app, and that we could do this just to the affected batches. And we were able to attach and view a certification. It was an anti-slavery certification that Matolo had recently obtained, and this was of interest to consumers. So to demonstrate the electronic flow of the product information to support domestic market access, for certifications is becoming increasingly important. And we were also able to demonstrate the same track forward and trace backwards for the Cherry project. So, putting a QR code on a product is not traceability, but it permits that trace back, which is half of the traceability equation. For tracking forwards, you need to have all the supply chain partners to be able to share data in a quick and efficient manner. So I'm going to pass you over to Jess now. But as you can see, we were able to really follow the product's journey, end-to-end traceability, using GS1 global data standards, but also having interoperability between the different partners, and provide valuable data insights to the growers. And this was something, that the Matolo family farms had no idea. They have no idea how long it takes for their potatoes to get to the consumer, and they have no idea of the quality of what it's like when it gets to the consumer. So we had some amazing results and, some really great consumer insights that we were able to share with Matolo as well. So thanks,
you. Mel. So as Mel mentioned, we did have that whole traceability success of identifying product, being able to track forward and backwards, which was a key one of our objectives for the project. But we also had this really interesting consumer experience piece going on as well. So there was a huge benefit for the industry suppliers of Matolo and Cantor Organics, but there was also this really interesting value add for the consumers purchasing both potatoes and cherries. So we're able to, through this platform, we're able to reach the consumer in the event of a recall. And now this might seem like this already happens. You know, you might hear on the news about a recall, or you might hear, you might see a flyer out in Woolworths or Coles when there is a recall for a product. This actually allows us to individually go to a consumer, and they're able to get an alert that says, this product is subject to recall, please contact Food Authority or the retailer. So that's a really good safety measure for consumers to be able to trust in their product and be able to understand you know, the safety of their product as well. Mel mentioned that we created a really engaging platform, and Greg at Fresh Chain was able to pull together this amazing piece of work which had videos, we had recipes, we had the ability to go and put certain items into your cart from the Woolworths store. So it was a really fun option for consumers to have, and I will show you in a couple of slides. You'll be able to experience this yourself. But this targets this new wave that we're kind of on. People are interested in where their food comes from, and they're also interested in what more can I do with the humble cherry or the potato, and is there something more that I can do to keep it stored for longer, or can I turn it into something else? So we're tapping into an area which is getting more and more traction, which is exciting as well. And like Mel mentioned, providing data insights to the grower. So the consumers were actually able to leave a comment about the product or rate the product, and actually ask questions directly back to the grower. And our suppliers were really keen on being able to interact, because as Mel mentioned, once the product's left their farm, they're usually not able to see where it ends up or what consumers think about their product. So stripping it right back, if they get a large amount of comments about a certain variety, this might be able to tailor certain crop management decisions that they have on farm as well. So I'll just get you to go to the next one, Mel, thank you. So these were some of the insights that Fresh Chain were able to put together for us. And so we had in the top left-hand corner here, you've got your most popular recipe is crispy potato fritters. So consumers were really interested in the different recipes that we had on offer through the platform. And crispy potato fritters was the first one that they loved. We had comments that consumers left, like, this platform was unexpected, it was insightful, and I really appreciated the greater transparency. And that's what we love to hear. The growers love to hear that they're being transparent and that you can trust their product. The image in the middle is the subject to current recall. So that's the little alert that consumers might see if the product is subject to a recall. And so regulatory officers like the New South Wales Department can actually target certain batches. So instead of removing whole batches, like Mel said, we're able to target specifically one batch that was packed on one day. It minimizes the amount of food waste and also allows for the supply chain to continue while a food incident is occurring as well. So instead of removing all product, we only have to remove affected product, which is really fantastic. And then we also can get insights, which the project team are quite interested in. You know, we had 4,500 labels that were activated. We had 386 total scanned, and we could see how many were actually scanned, how many times a product was scanned as well, which was really good. Thanks, Mel. And so I will allow you to get your phone out and just have a quick look at what the consumer experience is. You will get a little alert that says that the product's not verified, and that's just because we have a lot of people scanning the one barcode at one time. But that in itself is an interesting insight. So we can actually see if the barcode has been subject to counterfeit properties. So if a barcode is replicated a lot of times and scanned, we'll be able to see that on our system as well. So that's a really interesting insight, particularly in export markets, which we hope that this project will eventually get to. So while you're looking at that, I'll just jump on to the next one. Thanks, Mel. And just give a bit of an overview of what's next for CherryPlus. So as we've mentioned, this is only a very small pilot, but as you can see, we have a lot of interest from industry, from the retailers, from New South Wales government. So we really want to take this project to the next level. And so we're looking to expand to other industries, including vegetable industries. So if you're interested in being a part of our next iteration, please get in touch. Or if you know someone that fits the bill, please get them to get in touch too. We want to continue exploring the digital link capabilities. As Mel said, this is a world first, and these QR codes, the opportunities are endless. It's Lord of the Rings out here. So continue what that digital link can do. And exploring the use on interstate and international markets. We have the platform set up ready to go now, and we want to test it. Can we get end-to-end traceability over in Guangzhou or in Vietnam? We just want to see what we can do. The opportunities are endless with this system, which is really exciting. And we want to continue collaborating with on-farm traceability providers, so those internal traceability providers that growers already have, and integrating them into our system. So growers don't have to go out and find a new traceability provider. We want to be able to integrate it all into our system as well. And again, that digital certification piece, getting that fine-tuned so that can become a bit of a reality. Thanks, Mel. So last but not least, if you're interested in anything about the project, please get in touch. My mobile number or my email is there. Really happy to answer any questions, or if you have opportunities to collaborate, please get in touch. As you can see, Mel is a wealth of knowledge on the GS1 data standards, and is more than happy if you have industries or growers who are interested in getting on the GS1 platform, please give Mel a contact. And also, if you're really keen and loved what you saw with the traceability solution, I know that Greg would be more than happy to have a chat with you. So please give him an email. And I'm also more than happy to talk about that traceability system as well, because as you can see, it was very well put together. So that's all from us. Dave, we might go to questions.
Thanks, Jess. And questions pretty well for the moment. So, really appreciate it. So I'm going to work through. You might have to just drop.
Oh, I think you just muted yourself, Dave.
No, sorry, no, the boss muted me.
Oh.
A couple of questions for you. From Emma, do you have any issues around label retention, for example, because the labels are critical to the process? Have you, if you have, are there other label options sort of in the pipeline for consideration?
Yeah, so I'll answer this one. So unfortunately, because the project was so scaled down, because it was a pilot, in a real life scenario, we would love to have the label as part of the packaging, so you wouldn't have to worry about the label slipping off. As we used the quick lock tags for the potatoes, they were really robust. We didn't have any issues that we know of those falling off. Woolworths uses those for promotions all the time, so that was a really good workaround. For the cherries, we just used a standard label on top of the clamshells, which was just a stick and apply. But that one was really exciting because we actually printed those on demand. So we were able to print exactly what we needed with the individualized QR code right there in the packing shed, and they were applied as a normal label would be. But yeah, as the project moves forward, we would love to include that in the full packaging, so you're not separately printing out labels.
Thanks, Jess. And for Mel, with the GLN, at a single location, you might have a number of different interventions. You're processing, a pack shed, a cool room, even some inspections. How do you deal with that? We've got multiple critical activities or elements at one location, or perceived one location.
Yeah, so that's a really important question, because wherever there's the need to track or trace, identify, capture information specific to a location, then it needs to have its own GLN. And so, you know, the main head office as a legal entity was in another state. They have a GLN as a business entity. Within the farm itself, you could have multiple locations that need to be tracked if there is a critical tracking event occurring within that particular location. And there's lots of ways you can do that. There's different ways to allocate GLNs. You can have an extension, you can serialize, you can, you know, we have 22,000 members within Australia, GS1 members, and more than 5% of those are in just fresh produce. So they all have access to a GLN already. You know, if you have barcodes, you already have access to a GLN.
Thank you, Mel. And while you're there, you made a comment about tracing forward requires supply chain partners to share their data, you know, because ultimately, you know, as your bag of spuds moves further down the line, there's more and more effectively indicators added to the code. How did you find in the pilot the willingness of the participants to share that way? And when you consider a scaled up version beyond the pilot, do you expect any headwinds in that regard?
Yeah, it's a really, really touchy subject, data sharing, especially for growers. And what we were surprised at is that the traceability data we needed to share was nothing more than what they're already sharing. It's printed on the label. What is a bit sensitive is location data. And the ability to share location data in a registry such as the National Location Registry, you provide that permission. So you're in control of your data. I think that's really important. And to understand who has permission to that, who is going to see that. So yeah, it is a really touchy subject. You know, you need to have your locations identified for food safety schemes. You need to, you know, so farmers and growers are already sharing that data. I think it's interesting and something that I'd like to share with industry, exactly what information it is that we talk about when we talk about data sharing.
Thanks, Mel. And just a shout out to Greg, of course, who developed that wonderful interactive experience for the value chain participants. Just note, everyone, that while that slides up, Greg's email address, his updated email address is gcalvert@freshchain.com.au. That's freshchain.com.au. I thought it was worth an extra shout out because I received so many texts from people who screen grabbed that interaction on that barcode that really got everyone's attention. So thanks, Greg and team from your side as well.
Yeah.
A question about next stage, if you like, in terms of the enabling technologies. And this is from Kieran. Will the next stage of the pilot be API driven? Just wondering about, for example, integrating this with farm management systems and sort of commonly used other platforms. Do you have a sense of how GS1 will effectively connect with that side of the world?
Yeah, so other platforms and systems, whether it's, you know, supply chain partners, traceability platforms, retailers, if we're talking a common language, if we're all understanding, and when I talk about global data standards, a really an easy concept to understand is a date code. So, you know, you could have day, month, year, or you could have year, day, whatever. Within the GS1 global data standards, all of our date codes is year, month, day. And we have data standards for production date, pack date, used by date, best before date. Systems understand what date I'm talking about. There's rules already associated with that. And then they can extract that year, month, day, put it into their system, store it, record it, do whatever they need to do with it. And that's having that common language. That's the interoperability. And what that means is that systems have their own internal traceability, but then when they're talking outside their own four walls, they're able to easily and quickly communicate. And, you know, making their systems scalable, future-proofing, because there is investments. And, you know, this is what one of the main questions that we get is how much does it cost? If it's interoperable, if it can be scalable, then it's going to reduce the burden.
Yes. And sorry, Jess.
Sorry, just to add, The other half of that question was, are we going to try and include on-farm traceability as part of the next pilot? And we definitely talked about that at the start of this, but we had a very short time period, very small budget for this pilot. And that's something that industry are very keen about as well. They've already got systems, and trying to link those in is definitely something on our radar. And that could be things from farm inputs such as chemicals, different audits that they've had on farm, and then moving them into our traceability system as well. So that's definitely on our radar.
Yeah, excellent. And I know one of our audience has actually got their GLM set up for their farms now, and they're going to reach out to see how they can connect to the project. So it's always great to see networking done live.
Oh, fantastic.
One more question. So I'm going to try and fold two in, and it's around two into the one question. It's around quality assurance and if you like, effectively ensuring the accuracy of data that's entered in that accommodates the or accompanies the code. What's your perspective on, if you like, the risks or the attitude of participants in terms of the accuracy of data recording that goes into accompany the codes?
Yeah, well, data is only as good as the data that's managed and maintained. And, you know, there's always going to be human intervention. There's always going to be, you know, once data is loaded into a registry, it's not just set and forget. It's constantly evolving. People are leaving the business. New contacts are coming on board. Properties get split and subdivided and sold. Data maintenance is a huge ongoing process. And we've seen that with master data and supply chain data. Now we're talking about location data. It's only as accurate. I mean, we can have some checks and balances into, you know, looking at other registries that are state-based departments may already maintain. There's checks and balances that can be done automatically, but data maintenance is as I said, it's an ongoing process.
And I think having that live consumer piece at the end of this really puts onus back on the grower to be able to continue updating their data so it is accurate and reliable for the consumer, because at the end of the day, you don't want out-of-date data or things going straight to the consumer. You want that competitive advantage and to be educating the consumer as you're going along as well. So I think that some of these systems will put onus back on maintaining good quality data from the farm through the supply chain too.
Yeah, that's a reality check of the whole process, and it's actually quite encouraging. So, look, thank you, Jessica and Melanie, for your presentation. Enormous interest. That's the most questions I've ever had to manage in a short period of time.
That's good.
It's wonderful, and I hope you all did capture that QR code up and have a look on your phone. It's a really impressive demo. So, thank you from the other parts of the team. Look, feel free to reach out to Jess and Mel directly if you'd like to follow up anything you heard today that we didn't cover in the Q&A, and you've of course got the last slide there just to remind you of that. Don't forget, we'll be releasing the recorded version of the seminar in the coming days. Keep your eyes open for our next seminar on Tuesday the 17th of May. We'll be hearing from Darren Gibbon from the West Australian Department of Prime Industries and Regional Development, that's DPIRD, about their $10 million eConnect Plus Grain Belt initiative. We're also looking forward to sharing you some exciting announcement at that seminar as well related to this project, related to Darren's project. Don't forget, we've got our big annual Food Agility Summit at Charles Sturt University in Wagga on the 1st and 2nd of June. We've got enormous uptake of tickets. There's no limit, thanks to not being restricted through COVID restrictions. So there's plenty of room for all. There'll be a networking event, postgraduate student day, many and varied presentations and panel sessions, and a field event out on the Global Digital Farm just down the road as well. So you can find details on our Food Agility website. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at Darren's seminar next month. Thank you all.